Welcome to Torchbearers by College Esports News. My name is Kenneth and on this show, we talk with those carrying the flame of college esports at programs across the continent to learn from their expertise in a particular segment of our vast ecosystem. Despite the overwhelming praise that this program receives for its ability to host the highest caliber of events, the recipe for success that's apparent at Full Sail University isn't a well-known secret across our ecosystem. To learn more, I sat down with Ashley Jones, Department Chair of the Game Business and Esports degree program, to learn more about what it takes to construct curriculum for student success and how those students get hands-on experience during their time at Full Sail. Without further ado, here's my conversation with Ashley. Well, Ashley, thanks so much for joining us on Torchbearers.
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be here today.
We're excited that you're here. The first question I like to start off with is, what is on the top of your mind? The first thing you have to do that's a work-related responsibility next time you're in the office.
Yeah, there's definitely a couple of things that immediately jump to mind. We're looking at continuing to align our curriculum, right? We just had our program advisory committee. We have a yearly time where they visit campus and they meet with us. So that meeting happened like 2 weeks ago. So we're continuing to streamline that kind of in lines with industry standards. We're creating some new networking opportunities for students as well. So that's kind of a little mini side project that I'm working on. And just teaching. This month I've got my esports and gaming management course and also our Portfolio 6 class that I've got both of those sections online. So teaching and grading as well.
Yeah. Teaching and grading ends up being a lot more work than I think people give it credit for. Knowing that, as I've done a little bit of teaching as a graduate assistant, but obviously nothing on the scale of a full 3 credit-hour course. So yeah, plenty going on there, I have to imagine. Next up, I want to get started with what's your story in how did you get involved in video games in the first place? And then how did you get involved in esports?
Yeah. So for me, video games was, it's kind of been near and dear to my heart since my youth, if you will. My cousins lived really close by, and we would get together with them every weekend. And the majority of my cousins are male, and video games reigned supreme at that moment in our lives. So it was a great way to be able to, connect with them, spend time with them, and it wasn't ever something that I outgrew, obviously. Whenever they got a new console, I got the old, like when they got the N64, I got the Super Nintendo that they used to have.
The hand-me-downs.
Yes, yeah. So it was definitely a really good cycle. So it definitely, kind of spearheaded me continuing to play video games, even high school, going into college as well. So that's really where kind of sticking with it, right, is kind of where I found myself really leaning into the esports side of things.
Okay. Why don't you expand on that? What was kind of like your first foray into the industry?
Yeah, for me, it was League of Legends. Love it or hate it, it was League of Legends. It was a game that, if I'm dating myself a little bit here, right, came out just in between the high school, college area. So it was something that I was able to find those lifelong connections with, right? The folks that I met at university, right? And playing League of Legends with them really kind of spearheaded me into when the NALCS first popped up, and followed that religiously as it was getting spun up, and kind of watching how, like, where it was to where it is today. Just that trajectory was something that really drew me in, and after that it was, game over. I'm in it for the long haul.
All right. We can say a lot of things about League of Legends, but the one good thing we can say about it is that it did introduce a lot of people to what esports is like.
Absolutely.
Probably a net positive overall, if we were to consider that. So next up, obviously your current role, right, more curriculum development and in higher education. So what drew you into teaching and what drew you into that higher education environment specifically?
Yeah, so I did graduate with a degree in sociology, and the goal after I graduated was to actually work in high school. I went in to work with high school kids, and after graduated, I applied to a bunch of different schools. I had some interviews, and nothing quite ever panned out. But I knew that education was still something that I was really passionate about. So I began working at a university just in like an IT type role. But esports was something that I always kind of kept on the side. It wasn't sure that it was something that I could ever put my all into. I was a little worried that it didn't make sense financially to go in that direction. But then I saw kind of this perfect blend of the two things that I'm most passionate about, right? Which was higher education and esports when, the big collegiate esports boom happened 5 or 6 years ago. And at that point in time, it was like a light went off in my head. So that's really kind of, it took me about 10 years to actually get to the teaching part of it, right? Lovely little scenic route, if you will. But it really did, I think, everything happens for a reason. So I think that since I was able to gain that esports experience and now I'm teaching it on a daily basis, it did give me, the confidence to be like, yeah, I did really want to teach, but I didn't have the expertise that I needed until I got it, right? So it was a long scenic route, but it was well worth it.
Nothing wrong with taking the scenic route,
Beautiful.
There's plenty of time to do it, right? Nothing wrong with that whatsoever. So I guess the next question then becomes naturally, when did you find yourself in a position to be able to start teaching in a more instructive capacity rather than like, you were involved in another esports program here or there, right? A lot of us have done that, right? In some form or fashion. But how did you get involved in actually teaching in that classroom environment?
Well, I grew up in South Florida, right? And Full Sail being in Winter Park, it was a couple of hours north of where I grew up. So I always knew that Full Sail existed, but at the time when I was of age to go to college, they didn't have any degree programs that I, specifically found an interest in. So I did the traditional 4-year thing. And it wasn't until Sari Keitlin, the director of esports at Full Sail, this was during my time when I was working at NACE, she flew me out to the Full Sail campus, and it was during their homecoming week, which they call Hall of Fame. And it's just, it is really kind of like a homecoming. It's a week long. Classes are not happening, but there are panels for students to attend. There's events for them to go to, and they're inducting prominent alumni into their Hall of Fame. So just really kind of the buzz from that and being able to interact with students and other staff members that worked at Full Sail, it really... I guess that's, again, I would say another light bulb went off, and it really propelled me to try to think about how do I get here, right? How do I be a part of something that feels so impactful and significant? So honestly, I got home from that trip, and I went on the Full Sail website, and it just so happened that is when Full Sail was building the game business and esports degree program, and... bada bing, bada boom, I became a course director here.
There you are. So I guess one of the things I'm kind of curious about is, you're coming from a traditional 4-year institution, but Full Sail is not quite the traditional 4-year institution. As you were getting into that role, was there a learning curve and adaptation that you had, or did you kind of like understand why things were set up the way they were right away at Full Sail? Talk to me a little bit, maybe for some of the viewers that don't know what that, general semester, quote unquote, looks like for Full Sail students. And then, what was that kind of learning curve like for you?
Yeah, so definitely a unique circumstance, right? The way that the Full Sail academic calendar, if you will, works is instead of having a traditional, you have a set of courses that you take for your fall semester, spring, or summer. We run courses in a monthly capacity. So what students might be getting from one class over a few months, we are pigeonholing into 1 month. So that gives students the opportunity, right? They can either graduate in about 21, 22 months, or they can do what we call the extended track, and they're getting their degrees in 27 months. So with that model, it gives the students that we have the opportunity to, kind of learn as much as they can, right? We're definitely taking the time in those 4 weeks, right? Our lectures are 4-hour scheduled lectures, right? So they are still getting quite a bit of time in lectured in the classroom, but this accelerated timeline gives them the opportunity. Esports moves so fast. The entertainment industry moves so fast. It gives us the chance to be able to make sure that when they do get out, right, the technologies that they've been using, what they've learned is still applicable to whatever industry that they're looking to get into. So the accelerated nature makes a lot of sense when we're looking at these students to, land in these accelerated industries.
Yeah, I mean, I think that makes sense, right? By the time often that you get out of your, 4-year degree, sometimes the things that you learned, especially in STEM fields, have either become slightly tweaked or, there's been a new development in the field or something of the sort. And so getting students through the specialist courses they need to be able to be successful, I think, and impactful in the industry is worthwhile. So I guess the question again, the follow-up is, what was that adjustment like for you? Because I assume when you're coming in, you're kind of like, oh, okay, sure. Like I can probably teach like a 14 weeks course, right? You take one topic a week and you break it up with some activities or whatever. Now, all of a sudden, all of that's packed down. When you're designing a course, what are you thinking about that could be different from what you would have otherwise?
Yeah, so it was certainly, like you said, certainly a learning curve. And I think what is most something that I definitely always have to remind myself is that we only have 4 weeks. So the opportunity to have, really specific in-depth conversation, that can happen, right? And it usually does kind of, a student will ask for a one-off, join office hours. But for the curriculum itself, it's kind of the approach that I've taken is since my home course, if you will, the Esports and Gaming Management course, since that one is specific about the team management, performance, analytics and the like, I'm giving them just enough information to be a little bit dangerous, if you will, if they want to go in the education space, if they want to go into the pro side of things, if they're looking at maybe some more community, your local libraries, Boys and Girls Club, right? So it's sort of making sure that they're understanding of everything that there is out there and giving them enough knowledge in each of those areas that if they happen to find themselves in that spot, they do have some of the knowledge that they can lean back on from their studies.
Yeah, I think we talk about esports as like its own silo, but that's not true at all, right? You have to, depending on what you're planning on going towards, right? You have to know a decent bit about enough different topics. That's one of the phrases my dad used to use too, is, I coach bowling only enough to be, I know enough to be dangerous. Right. And that's the goal sometimes, right? In terms of actually creating an impactful experience for students that they can then take onward. So that curriculum development skill feels like it's a different one than just showing up and teaching a syllabus that's mostly handed to you with set learning objectives. Maybe you have to figure out how you want to do it or what things you're flavoring in. But actually writing those learning objectives so that they are impactful for students. How confident did you feel in your ability to do that when you were first asked?
Yeah, so part of the hiring interview process, right, to be a course director is at least 5 years of work in the industry in which you are going to teach. And then the other one is sort of building that curriculum ahead of time. So I was given, the course learning objectives, and I was given also kind of like the overall degree objectives as well. So being able to reference those and kind of start to build a curriculum on the side was something that I sort of came into this position already having. Of course, tweaks are made along the way, right? We talk about esports being super fast and things changing and processes changing, technology, right? So it is interesting that you definitely want to make sure that the curriculum that you have created is impactful and relevant, but that it also stays updated. So actually, with this opportunity to have courses in these 4-week periods, it does afford us as course directors to, okay, this very impactful thing has happened within the industry. I can turn it around in the next month and be able to teach on that, specifically talk on that. So I think that the confidence level, right, it really just came from knowing what I do know, and also having the opportunity to connect with others in the places that I don't know enough to be to kind of have those conversations. So I've had quite a few folks kind of come in, right? We have our program advisory committee that comes in and says, hey, this is being talked about, but actually maybe we're using this methodology instead. So it's kind of leaning into those PAC members. It's leaning into members of the community. Matthew Pothoff is a Full Sail graduate who gives back to Full Sail all the time. And he definitely helped me with kind of creating and crafting that first level when I'm talking about the pro side of things. He definitely came in and, helped me make sure that what I'm talking about is still relevant to the industry.
I guess that was my next follow-up question, which you kind of already started answering, is when you're talking about keeping things updated, how consistent are those conversations that you're having with industry professionals, and how broad do you try to reach? Like, are you actively going out of your way? I don't know if like Full Sail has like a traditional research component to it too, or expectation out of instructors, but is your research instead like researching what curriculum developments you need to change, for the next month?
Yeah, so we have our program advisory committee that is made up of a couple of individuals, and we meet once a year, and they look at the courses that we're offering and kind of the key elements of what those courses are teaching. So they give us feedback that we in turn give to our course directors. That happens about once a year. And then me, from just my own course and looking at it from the day to day, right? It's making sure that I'm clued into the, collegiate side of things. That one comes a little more naturally, right? But it is also looking at, I'm following all of the major pro organizations. I'm following all of the riots and the Activision Blizzards, and if there's any major updates there, keeping that part of the gig. So I do set aside time specifically to just go out there and look for, hey, what's having some issue or concern here, or what's changing, right?
What happened last week?
Yeah, right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah. The Overwatch Pro scene having a complete upheaval, and now they've completely changed their format. So just making sure that I'm setting aside time to stay relevant. That's something that I've built into my calendar. So almost a weekly basis, I kind of go out there and just for an hour or two, do a little surfing and, chat with anybody who's willing to take my DM.
There you go. Don't ignore your DMs from Ashley, because maybe it'll lead to a productive conversation where you can, impact the next generation of students. As Ashley just mentioned, setting aside time to keep up with what's going on across the various leagues, conferences, and game titles of collegiate esports is important. But even still, Staying up to date on what's going on in the collegiate esports space can be incredibly challenging. Sometimes it feels like it requires esoteric knowledge to find out how your alma mater has been performing across a variety of different leagues. Information is scattered across so many different websites, like the league pages of NACE, NECC, and ECAC, and not to mention the hundreds of Discord servers. That's why we created College Esports News. Since our launch in 2022, College Esports News has been primarily volunteer run. As a team, we've been able to create over 300 pieces of content across graphics, videos, and written articles for viewers like you to enjoy and keep up with the happenings of college esports. Along the way, we've been able to offer paid opportunities on projects like Torchbearers, creating written content for our website, and through our coverage of some partner leagues. We want to make this semester incredible, but we can't do it alone. CEN is currently crowdfunding to cover operational costs. These are the expenses that keep our processes running smoothly and enable us to level up our coverage. If you'd like to contribute, you can go to paypal.me/collegeenews to tip now. Every dollar, share, or kind word makes a world of a difference. Thank you so much for your consideration and support. Now, back to my conversation with Ashley.
Networking is still valuable even when you're here, right?
Right.
Always be networking.
Yeah. I guess that's the other thing too, is that I think a lot of us could probably use some just dedicated time set aside. Right now, I'm like going through the process of trying to read up on other academic papers. I did some research, during my master's thesis, but now I'm going out of my way to go further and, okay, what other like teamwork structures are there, and, communication tendencies and things like that. How do you better support students in that team environment? I hope there's going to be things to take away. I'm even reading a handful of books right now that are about like mentality in traditional sports and trying to find where the parallels can be in esports. I guess there's another question for you, Ashley, is are you really focused on just esports? Or because esports is so new, are you trying to pull in things from a traditional sports background or pull in things from more broadly speaking in the games industry that also will impact esports students? Where kind of else does your reach fall to?
Yeah. So with my kind of speaking about my home course, right, the esports and gaming management one, I would say if I'm kind of looking at all of my course content as a whole, I'd say like 95% of it is what I've been able to grasp specifically from those different areas in the esports industry. I think traditional sports, we lean in on that to help illustrate examples. It's like, and I think my time as the head coach, right, the head coach role that I had a few years ago, that, building a competitive team program from one that didn't exist, I spent a lot of time, leaning on, the coaches that I had in my department who had been doing this for a number of years. So that definitely had an impact on how I coached and created teams and philosophy. So there's probably some of that peppered in throughout, and being able to use that as a way to help bridge gaps. In my class, I talk pretty extensively about, we talk about traditional esports being in this bubble, and then esports, right, is kind of over here on an island, and I would never want it to feel like it's on an island. So I do try to, inform my students that if there's anybody that ever has the perception, right, that esports is kind of on that island alone, just be sure to kind of tap into what it is that they know and what it is that they are familiar with, and that's traditional sports, right? All of the soft skills, the teamwork, the critical thinking, the communication, right? Everything that you're learning in the traditional side of things is also applicable to esports. So I feel like once you're able to kind of talk that language, that's when you'll see people go, Aha. So
Yeah.
I do hone in on that pretty significantly in my courses.
Okay. Yeah. And we talked about that a little bit on a previous episode with Kurt Melcher, who comes from the athletics background, right?
Uh-huh.
Um, More so thinking about how that esports environment goes. Oh, okay. Suddenly this makes sense to me, right?
Hmm.
When someone's looking at it. But I guess that leads into the next question quite nicely is
Hmm.
there is still a stigma around video
Yeah.
games and esports. That is something that most of us have to combat with every day, right?
Yeah.
How do you help prospective students understand the degree that they receive from Full Sail
Hmm.
can actually translate into a career in the industry?
Yeah, so esports, right? Huge industry, right? And the growth that we're experiencing, we're us within the game business degree program, right? We are intentionally trying to make sure that the course directors that we're bringing in, have a good grasp on, the gaming side of things, the esports side of things, but to a greater extent, kind of that business area as well. So we're looking at what kind of gainful employment, what that looks like in a post graduation world, right? We've had graduates, our on campus graduates, we've had for about a year and a half now. We just hit the year mark on our online population as well. And we have a handful of our alumni that have already landed jobs within either the gaming side of things or the esports, but it's really kind of what they've been able to learn from their degree program, along with the other opportunities that Full Sail affords a lot of the students, which is that hands-on experience, the project-based learning. We do have quite a few different events come into the Full Sail facilities, right? Because they're immaculate. So the students are able to volunteer in all of those capacities, help these different organizations network. So their education alongside of those other learning opportunities really sets them up nicely. And it's not just about the competitive side of things. It's not just about the esports, but really how the business is built up to support it.
Yeah, and I kind of want to go a little bit more in detail with
Mm-hmm.
the hands-on experiences that students get
Yeah.
at Full Sail. What does the symbiotic relationship look like between the esports and gaming management program and the Armada themselves? Because obviously, two distinct things, right?
Yeah.
But I imagine there's a lot of cross-play, cross-overlap, right? In not only the students, but also maybe directly how you're working with each other.
Yeah, so I would definitely. Well, we are two separate entities, right? We've got the game business and esports degree program, and then the Armada, right? So I would say we're two people that we hold hands, right? Like you said, there are a ton of students in our degree program that they could be competing on one of the teams in the Armada. We've got a stream team, so they could be a part of that as well. We have broadcasting and shoutcasting available, so there's a ton of different places that the students can, take what they're learning over here and bring it straight into the classroom. We also, in the past year or two, we've kicked off our Armada, kind of like a production crew, if you will. So these are the folks that when those big events do come in, right, when we've got any sort of gaming or esports event that comes to campus, this Armada production crew, they're coming in to fill some of those roles that could be, job opportunities down the line. So they're help setting up hundreds of PCs. They're helping be stage managers during the live event. They're helping the folks that we have coming on to campus navigating campus a little bit. So they're filling a ton of different roles, and it's part of the gig to run an event on campus. Is one of our stipulations is that you have to use the student crew. There's professional oversight, right? But they do have to utilize our student crew in a number of different capacities to afford those students those opportunities to learn.
Yeah, that's awesome, and obviously great opportunities for students. But
Yeah.
the small little thing, I've never gotten to experience a Full Sail event myself, right? But I've heard, social media, the student team always knocks it out of the park. But you obviously also just mentioned that I would assume the student team turns over, every 20 months or so, right?
Yeah.
You've got a significantly different group of students in now, a year and a half after, where things were the event prior. How are the students like well trained, well versed, and ready to roll when it comes down to event time? Is there like a requirement that they have to be beyond a certain course by the time that they go volunteer, or are the kinds of students that are coming into the program just the ones that are ready to buckle down and figure it out when things get heated and that putting out the fires situation at an event?
Yeah, so that's a great thing to focus in on because we've got graduation on Friday, right? We've got a group of students that are going to be graduating in 2 days, so the turnover is great. The best thing about Full Sail is the type of student that is here, and like you said, you come to Full Sail and like in your DNA, you are a go-getter. Because there is all of these opportunities. You can join the production crew and have zero experience. You can join and be like, I want to learn, I'm willing to learn all of the things that there are to offer, but there's not necessarily a requirement that needs to be reached. Essentially, for each individual event, the production crew will put out a call, right, to join the production crew. They'll have a couple of meetings before the event actually happens, so they have a good idea of who in the room. Okay, this student has been with us for a year at this point. We can give them, a stage manager role, whereas somebody that this might be their first event, this might be their first couple of months within Full Sail, maybe we'll have them set up some computers. And we'll have some spot checking, right, to go behind it to ensure that things are getting done that in the way they need to. So it does kind of afford the students that learning curve and opportunity in the event, that they're not coming into these events and roles with any sort of experience at all.
It almost, the way you're describing it sounds like it's more of there's probably more professional staff oversight than one person trying to bring the whole event together. There's a handful of folks probably involved in helping that out, but then in that way, it almost feels like it's a true internship or something, right?
Yeah.
Where the students are getting experience working with professionals who probably only, presumably are only really working Full Sail events, but know that they're working with students, know that they can help mentor them along the way in those setup responsibilities, and also have confidence in the students that they'll be able to knock it out of the park, right? And can give them task upon task. What's that kind of environment like? Like, show day, is it the professional staff members are just watching behind their backs and like, we'll see what happens? And like, hoping that everything doesn't break, right? How many folks are back there, and what does that look like for the students?
Yeah, I would say for the mission critical components of an event, that is a Full Sail staffer that is
right.
manning that station. I would say. Now, they might have a student shadowing them, right? They could have a student that, if we have somebody who is the event producer, right? That's certainly going to be a Full Sail staff member. I mean, we have an entire department that their tasks and their expertise are just running events on campus. So there's a whole gaggle of them, right? So in those mission critical roles, they might have a student or two watching and kind of in that shadow role. And then, if we've got a group of students that are putting the PCs together, or we've got, the student on stage being holding that stage manager area, right? There definitely is, I'll be the staff member that oversees PC setup, and I'll be the staff member on the side of the stage in the event that one or two of the stage managers, they're going to be the first ones on the stage if something goes wrong, but if a certain amount of time goes by and they're not able to crack the code of what the issue is, then we'll have, kind of the Full Sail folks to jump in. We want to make sure, right, that we are giving students the opportunities to have these experiences and literally learn, right, as the event is taking place. But we also aren't looking to jeopardize anybody's event that they have brought to Full Sail for in a very meaningful way. So it is a balance to strike for, hey, we're giving students opportunities and they're learning and they're honing their skills, but we do also still have the professionals in the room for if, something needs their particular expertise.
Once you've seen enough in the professional event space, you've probably seen most of everything. But that experience is hard to come by after being there for about a year.
Yeah.
I have to imagine. The next thing I kind of wanted to go over here is we're talking about student support structures. What else kind of exists at Full Sail for students to be able to take advantage of that can help them get along where they need to be, take advantage of other opportunities, and find those other, maybe, instead of just the homegrown events, find those other opportunities out in the real world.
Yeah, Orlando is a great spot, right, for our little entity to exist. We do have from other than the Mouse House, right? But we do have, especially with us being, we're tied closely to our sports marketing and media degree as well. So we have some long-standing relationships with a bunch of different entities that are in Orlando. So NXT, the Magic, Solar Bears, right? Any sports-related thing, right? There is opportunities for students to be able to go out and find these volunteer opportunities with these groups, and that could, if they go in a volunteer capacity and really knock some socks off, we've seen students be able to secure internships either while they're with us in the degree program or even right after they graduate. We do have a handful of students that will turn, again, they're putting in the work and they're showing their knowledge and expertise. And then those, we've seen a couple of those also roll into just full-time employment after that moment in time. So there are some entities that, are in the Orlando area very aware of us from a sports side of things, right? Also entertainment, of course, Disney, Universal, all that good stuff. So right. We do have, Full Sail has some standing relationships that us, right, the game business and esports program is still fairly new. So we're able to still tap into those opportunities for our students, especially if there's a student with a real big desire to, work with any of these entities. Usually it's a pretty easy connection that we can make for them.
And you too can make easy connections at your next LAN or conference by showing your support for college esports news via our merch. We have hoodies and zip-up jackets to keep you warm as temperatures drop, and a jersey which you can customize with your gamertag. Want something a bit more casual? Check out our college esports news t-shirts. You too can be a torchbearer with our OG design. Visit acquire.ca/CEN and use code CEN for 5% off your college esports news merch order. Again, that's AQUIRE.ca/CEN to get some merch for yourself. Now, back to my conversation with Ashley. Yeah, so as you talk about the connections you can make with, other companies in the area, you're talking about the events you're able to run and the hands-on experience that students can get there. To me, all of this sounds like a well-oiled machine that Full Sail has been doing for quite some time. Maybe not directly in, game business and esports, but more broadly in production fields, entertainment fields, and things of the sort.
Yeah.
But as I'm listening to this as, the one person manning my program, right?
Yes.
How do, which is a role you're familiar with, how do I begin providing those kinds of opportunities for my students? How can I start setting things up so that in 2-3 years from now, I can have multiple internship opportunities, connections being able to be made to other external parts. Where can I start that if I don't know what I'm doing at all?
So my advice would be to we love networking. So my advice would be to look within the institution, right, that you might be working for, and network with individuals that can help you, right, in those endeavors. If you're in a city that has a bunch of sports teams, right, esports, right, if they're, especially for the students that are looking to kind of go into that industry, a lot of what, again, we're teaching and we're learning in these programs can be applied to the sports side of things. So it's a great way to kind of transfer those skills and be able to get that expertise. So maybe, a few years down the road, if an esports opportunity presents itself, right, you'll be well prepared. You've got experience, out the wazoo. But I would look at the different folks that might be on your campus that could help secure some of those opportunities. Of course, all of the departments are going to be labeled something different, right? But something like an advancement department at your university that is really clued in to the different businesses and organizations that might be in your city or in your county, and maybe even in your state. I would probably start there and see if there is any pipeline of folks that they are aware of and have good relationships where something like that could come to fruition. It's really hard, right, as a single staff member to be able to take on that as an entirely new responsibility because it's outside of your sandbox, so to speak. So that's when, if it's anything that wants to be pursued that kind of falls outside of that sandbox, that's where I really lean into the networking side of things and seeing if you can get folks in other areas of your institution to come along for the ride, so it's not as difficult to do solo.
Certainly difficult to do solo, right? Anything is difficult to do solo, let alone the current workload that many of us have.
Oh yeah.
I guess the next question is, maybe that's more thinking outside opportunities. What about the internal ones, right? If I was going to start trying to build the next Full Sail Events industrial complex, where would I start with that, especially in terms of training students to be able to manage the LAN event that I've got coming up, or trying to create that opportunity for students, and maybe even in some cases where there isn't a gaming club already that I can turn to, right? Yeah. Trying to find those students who want to be involved, and then being able to prepare them well enough to run their first event.
Yeah, I would say, especially if it is like event preparation that needs to take place, first and foremost, what I would do is make sure that there is a facility that is available. It could be on campus, but it also could be off campus, right? If there is, thinking about some of these, the smaller NAIA schools, and that's kind of where I came from, there may not be a facility that exists on campus that could house something like that. Not even just from a size point of view, right? But can the internet, hold up, right? Can the power hold up? There's a lot of things I've learned that there's a lot of things inside of the walls that even if the space looks great and you feel like it can fit visually what you're looking for, if the guts in the walls aren't there to help support it, then it's a no-go. So I would definitely start looking at it from the space point of view. And then with your students, if you're looking to help prepare them for those the TO opportunities, stage manager, kind of event setup and striking, I think a lot of good knowledge can come from, maybe doing a little bit of research, but also maybe tapping into, most universities also have some sort of a events team that's on campus. And while they may not specifically have esports or gaming related events experience, they can still give you a really good idea of holistically how to take care of an event, how to, ensure that it runs as smoothly as it can. So I would be tapping into the events team that might be on your campus. Maybe there's someone local that does some esports and gaming things to tap into. And then maybe, I have to imagine that the Full Sail Armada, if the call was out there, tap into them, right? I think that we're still in an area where, it's the rising tide lifting all boats, ships, right? So
Something
if
like
it helps to have something like that, but it might help to have, this is another university that's like doing the things, just tapping them on the shoulder and, hey, how does this start? How does this work? Kind of tapping into that network, I think would be, monumentally helpful as well.
Yeah. At some point, it's about throwing up the bat signal and being like, maybe the bat signal is the Full Sail Armada logo, right? That you need to put up to make sure that you can grab people that know what they're doing to get you started. I guess the last thing I kind of want to sum on, we kind of have started to stray away from this, which I think has been fantastic. But I want to go back to your role in this whole ecosystem. We talked about how we're able to prepare students through a variety of different channels. What does your week to week or maybe month to month look like?
Yeah. So I typically have 2 classes that I teach every month. Sometimes it's 3 if we're feeling froggy. But it is the Esports and Gaming Management course and the Project and Portfolio 6 course. And what's really interesting about those 2 courses in particular is that it's actually Portfolio 6 is our final capstone project. So it's the class that they take right before they graduate. And in the course catalog, mine is directly in front of it. So there's always an opportunity, instead of me having students for 1 month at a time, I actually get them for 2. I get them for 2 consecutive months. And those are really pivotal months for them to they're about to graduate. And there's this really interesting, Full Sail, obviously, just from the way that we're structured, we move so quickly. And after doing that for 21 to 27 months, that all is about to stop. And, it's one of those things like where the train has just kept going for so long. And now that they see that the train is about to stop, it's equal parts like, we're covering the material and we're getting through the course content, but then there's a whole other side that I've been just helping students, like, I don't have a job after graduation, what do I do, right? It's that level of all of this is about to stop and my day-to-day is drastically about to change. How do I navigate that? So that kind of puts me in a really unique position, one that I love, right? I got out of college thinking that I was going to teach, right? So now that I've taken the scenic route and I've gotten here, yes, can confirm I love teaching. But the other thing that I also love as well is this additional alumni support that very naturally I've just sort of fallen into, not only because I teach those last 2 classes before they graduate, but also being the department chair for the degree program. There's a ton of students that, they'll have just graduated and, hey, can you look at this resume for me? Or, hey, this is a job that I'm interested in. What do you think? Is it something that, I fit the role of at this moment in time? So kind of the different roles of department chair and course director, and also the 2 different courses that I'm teaching. I would say my week to week looks like lecturing every day, doing a little bit of grading, and then also connecting with the alumni who are just looking for additional support, a resume review, or just somewhere to talk about how they're currently feeling.
Yeah, and probably most students trying to enter the workforce right now need to talk about how they're currently feeling.
Absolutely.
Because it's It's a bit of a struggle.
Yeah.
I imagine it's always a struggle to make the transition, right?
Yeah.
But now more than ever, perhaps.
Absolutely.
The last question, Ashley, that we ask everyone is if you could snap your fingers to change one thing about collegiate esports, what would it be?
Ooh. Okay, so if I could, I'm going to wave my magic wand here. I would want to ensure that the perception of aging out of the industry, if we could kind of help massage that language a little bit better, right? Just because I can't play League of Legends with the rest of them, right? Just because I can't do that doesn't mean that there aren't other ways to still pour into the esports industry and be a part of it and support it, right? So, and I think that's really our goal, right, with the game business and esports program is showing students, right, that you're very good at your game now, but you're not always going to be top dog, right? But if esports is where your heart is, and it's something that you want to continue to be a part of, like as a career opportunity, competition will be short-lived. But there's so many other avenues that go beyond competition and gaming, and we're hoping that by giving them that support of learning the business side of things, that can extend into many different roles. You know, hopefully programs like this and other programs around the country that are trying to accomplish the same thing, hopefully that can kind of massage that language that you can only fall within this time of your life to be relevant and to be a part of something that you care about.
I think for many of us, we'll care about the whole thing for years to come.
Yes.
And I could only hope that as time goes on, that language will fall out of favor. But I suppose we're yet to see. Well, Ashley, it's been wonderful to get to chat with you today. Do you have any other closing thoughts or closing remarks you'd like to give?
Yeah, I just want to thank you all for having me on here. I have had a lovely time, and go college esports. I'm ready. Let's keep building, and let's keep building responsibly and sustainably.
Let's keep at it. Rome was never built in a day, and we'll keep going for it. Thanks so much, Ashley.
Thank you.
You just listened to Torchbearers by College Esports News. Thanks so much again to our guest, Ashley Jones, for joining us on this episode. As always, I was your host, Kenneth Gracina. Tom Screech collaborated as a writer on this episode. V. Tran is our editor. Sheridan Shea helped record this episode, and Derek Santiago is creative director of CEN. Be sure to follow CEN on X, TikTok, YouTube, and Instagram to stay up to date on all things college esports. And check out our website at collegeesportsnews.org. If you liked this episode, please engage with it on social media. And if you want to support us even more, you can visit our merch store at acquire.ca/CEN or give a tip at paypal.me/collegeenews. Thanks for listening, and keep carrying the flame.